Hello, doers. We're back with another webinar. This time we're talking about implementation methodology for partners. My name is Faris Wali. I'm a project leader here in Odoo, Middle East, Dubai. And you can reach me at fwa@odoo.com. So in today's presentation, we're going to talk about the key concepts. We're going to talk about the successful projects, roles, implementation phases, implementation challenges, use cases, and how to measure your performance as a project leader, and then we can have a live Q&A session. So let's define some key concepts in Odoo implementation methodology. What is the implementation methodology? And we will refer to it here as OIM. It's a booklet that we issue every few months. It has all the updated tips and tricks on how to implement the project, how to do sales for Odoo, and it's like an all-inclusive guide. Basically, project leaders have the opportunity to improve people's lives at work. This is what we do when we configure the software, the databases. It's a hard, impactful, involving job. It's prone to failure, and thus why we have this to protect us. This is something we learn. It's all the lessons learned that we gathered all over the years. And it summarizes the best practices. It's continuously being improved. We always add to it and issue a copy every now and then. So what really matters in the implementation methodology is onboarding the users on time and budget. So every project has its end users. It has a time in terms of deadline and implementation time, and a budget in terms of apps and what we can do. So this is the important three pillars of project implementations. Now, successful projects, we follow a rule that's 80-20. Meaning that 80% of the project can be done in 20% of the allocated time. This is the standard out-of-the-box solution. Everything else other than that is customization or development that we do at the later stage. So we try to keep it basically as standard as possible within the first implementation phase. And then later on, what we save from that time goes towards customization and development. So this is the difference between customization and development. Customization, as a consultant, I work with the fields, the views, the PDFs, the web design, and so on. Developers would work on workflow automation and adding to the code. But what I want to focus here on is why we avoid and delay the customization and developments till the end, because they cause delays. They need more testing. So there's a technical depth there. There's a complexity. It just slows down the project, which is against our quick start methodology. Now, another key concept is the customer satisfaction. Do not be driven by it, meaning input from the customer is of course important, but their satisfaction changes with the phase of the implementation. So at the beginning, they might be confused a little bit. They're struggling to understand the software. They're not trained enough. So their satisfaction will go a little bit down. But then after that, after they start using the system, they'll get excited, start optimizing their business activities using the system, and then thinking on how to add even more value with Odoo and their operation. So basically, customer satisfaction is a good KPI on the long run, but in a short run, it can be understandable if they're not so happy or confused with the system. Upselling, so selling extra services before going live, is not a priority at all. Upselling should be the result of a good work of a happy customer. Because it's easier, like it's easier to acquire, it's easier to sell to an acquired customer because they're already used to the system and they're convinced with the solution. They just need to expand their spectrum when it comes to Odoo. And upselling later on at a later stage will lower your project failure risk and will help you in deploying faster. Now let's talk about roles. A project leader is someone who is responsible for the implementation. It could be a business analyst doing a project by themselves. They could consult with a product expert, and they could have a project manager. Now, on a larger projects, we would have a project manager and a BA or a functional consultant. And on even larger projects, we'll have a team. So we'll have a project director that manages the team, and then we have team members. So as I said, the project director leads larger projects, which are within the MMC market, mid-market corporations. Their job is to present to the managing executives, to the C-suite people. They track the efficiency and solve the inefficiencies in the project and in the implementation, but they do not work directly on the project in terms of configuration. Their job is just to oversee the project from start to finish to delivery, and handling and managing the stakeholders from the client's side. Odoo Experts, so we have people who have extensive experience in some of the apps, mainly the key apps, finance, so we're talking about accounting, invoicing, inventory, marketing, manufacturing, website. They are not necessarily part of the project, so they're not involved in the projects from A to Z, but they're being consulted with on these projects. So they do the peer reviews with the projects across the board. They do ROI analysis at an early stage to estimate how much time a special development or a complex implementation would take. And they do some cross-checking and challenge some of the requirements that we have as implementers. A very important key concept is keeping a SPOK, which is a single point of contact. So in every project, on Odoo's end, there's the project leader. It could be, as I said, the business analyst, or it could be a project manager and a consultant, or it could be a project director for larger projects. These are the points of contact for the client at Odoo. So they connect the client with regards to this project. They connect them to the business advisor, they connect them to the app expert, to the developers if there's a development, and so on. Now, we expect the client to have SPOK on their side as well. So we need someone who is aware of all the requirements, someone who can make the decisions on spot, not consult with someone else, someone to manage the project and implementation from their end. Now, this is also a person that's going to be the point of contact with the sponsors, with the management at the clients, and with the end users. Basically, we will train the SPOK to be the Odoo champion at the company, and we will help the SPOK to train the end users and to communicate to the management and so on. So in another perspective, we can look at it from this side. Let's say purple is Odoo and the green is the client. So in terms of project supervision, we have the project director at Odoo. We have the project manager, SPOK, or sponsors, which are the managers, the CEO, CFO, and so on, at the client's end. In terms of project delivery, we have the business analyst on our end and the sponsors on the other end. In terms of development environment, we have the developers on our end. If the client has someone who's responsible for technology at their ends, so chief technical officer, or someone who is responsible for IT at their end, that could be that person. Customer relationship, we have the account manager for short term, and then for longer term it would be the CSD team. And on the end of the client, it's the sponsors. Now let's talk about phasing. In terms of phases, we have the ROI analysis, kickoff, implementation, go live, and then second deployment. ROI analysis is usually around 10% of the project as a budget. Sometimes for larger projects or more complex projects, it's done at a separate pack or separate stage before the project starts. And this is sold as an ROI project, and it's we had a webinar previously covering that, so you can refer back to that one. in the kickoff, if ROI is not done previously, it's a mini ROI is done in the kickoff. It's basically a stage where we align the stakeholders on the Odoo methodology. We do the planning for the implementation. We make sure the requirements are aligned with what they want and where they want to go with the system. And then the biggest bulk of the budget will go towards implementation. So we have a series of cycles, analysis, development, validation, key user training, and so on. And finally, the happy moment is going live, where it's 5%. It includes end user training and any support with issues like bugs and so on. And then after that, we go to second deployment. So all the customization or development that we postponed will take place at that stage. So at a later stage, once they're live and they're using the system up to, let's say, 80 or 85%, now we can do the corner cases. And that's where we do the second deployment. So to look at it from a more graphical way, let's see if I can point here. Okay, so ROI and gap analysis happens at the beginning of the project or before the project if it's a large or complex project. And then we do the phases of implementation. We kind of cut it into different phases depending on the flows. So let's say a customer has a commercial cycle, and then they have their e-business cycle, and then they have their manufacturing cycles. So each cycle will have its own phase. Every phase is implemented, configured, and then there's a validation from the customer and so on. And then once it's validated, we go to training, we go live, and then we move on to the next phase. We do the validation, the training, and then we go live again, and then so on until we reach the end of the project. After that, the project is put on support, where it receives a post-production change request if there's any change request from the client's end, or they need to modify something or make it better. There's also functional and technical support. So let's say you run out of hours with the package. What happens is that they still, because they have subscription, they still have access to our functional and technical support, so they can basically raise a ticket and solve any issues that raises. Now, the pre-sale process, so this is more involved with ROI and before the project implementation. Basically, there's a scope of work, which is a document prepared by the account manager, the sales guys on our end, based on the requirements they gathered from the customer. It's estimated by a pre-sales consultant, which is also a consultant from a team that does the implementation. So they're familiar with how long things would take, what requirements to ask for, what can be done as standard, what can be done as customization through Studio, and what can be done as development. And finally, it's shared with the client. Once the client reads it, validates it, and agrees on it, we can do the sale of the project and start with the implementation. Now, implementation as a timeline, let's look at it from this side. From Odoo on the top, let's say Odoo will start doing the MVP, which is basically phase 1, or it's the simplest form the client can use Odoo. So let's say it's a commercial company. Their most important cycle is commerce. It's purchase, inventory, and sales. So I would do this as phase 1. And I would do it as an MVP because they can just use it out of the box without any customization or development. Now, once I've created that MVP, it's kind of a proof of concept. So I'll start teaching them teaching the customer how to use it, getting them comfortable and trained on how to work on this MVP. And then once it's done, let's say I've done it on test data, I can then import their real data. So I can do data migration, and then we can go live and go to support. Now on the client's end, in the beginning, they will be cleaning their own data. So they will, I'll give them a template on how to import these onto the system, but they have to do their own data cleaning. They will be learning on the side as well how the basic Odoo use. So how to use the basic applications, what are the flows, and so on. And then once I've done the configuration, they would do some testing. If they validate it or give me back feedback, we can fix it, and then they can test again. Once it's done and validated, we do the training, and then they're ready to go live. We prepare for the go live, and then they can go live, and then they'll have the first weeks of use. And along this process, we have the progress report, which is, let's say, a weekly or bi-weekly meeting to discuss all the updates and what are the pending points, what are the to-do points on our end as Odoo and on their end as the client. So the project kickoff, basically we onboard the SPOK and the company on our methodology as Odoo. If there's no ROI done previously, it's a quick ROI analysis is done throughout the kickoff phase, and then we finalize the project plan. We set the budget and the time and all the apps and flows and phases that we're gonna tackle. And then a very important thing is to manage the expectations. So the SPOK, the sponsors, the end users know what to expect by the end of the project implementation. Now, this can be one meeting or it could be more than one meeting, so it's not a one-time thing. If it takes multiple meetings to do the kickoff, that's fine. A good qualification of the project would help in later on the implementation and the success of the project. So for the development process, we try to defer and postpone customizations and developments till the end. But let's say something is very important, we would look first into doing workarounds and studio customization to avoid development. And then we assess if it's a must-have for their business or it's a nice-to-have. So if it's a must-have, we will include it in the initial implementation. But if it's nice-to-have thing, we'll push it to later stage, as I said before. Now, if it's a must-have, we'll go ahead with the planning. So we will raise a ticket as consultants to explain the business need, the what and why the client requires this requirement, and then we'll send it to the technical team, and they will estimate the hours and lines of code and all the technical stuff that will go on that ticket, and will come back to us with the budget required for that ticket. Now, we will communicate this to the client. If they're happy with it, they give us the go. Then we can go ahead with the development. Now, this is the same process that happens also in pre-sales. So let's say the pre-sale analyst thought that that a requirement would need a development. They would raise a ticket and add it to the pre-sale process. So it will also follow the same route here. Now, once the client gives us the go for the development, we'll go ahead and do the development, and the functional team will test this development. And then if it's fine and passes the tests, it will be sent to the client with test cases, let's say, to validate it. If it's approved, it will be pushed to production, and we'll move on with the implementation. Going live, so the most exciting moment. There are points that we need to agree on in going live, that training is not a conference. So at this point, we've discussed how you want to do the configuration. So there's no further configuration to be done there. It's just basically training the end user. So it's not a conference, it's more of a webinar, let's say, or if it's on site, it's also a seminar to train the end user. It's not a discussion. There's a lot of cross-checking with the key users to make sure that they've tested on their end and everything is running smoothly. It's very important to create a momentum to get the users and the sponsors and the SPOK excited for going live. Avoiding pushback and delay. Some clients would like to push back till New Year's or till their fiscal year ends or till a special date or deadline, but we try to implement as fast as possible. So trying to avoid the pushback and delay would help in quickly deploying the project. And being reactive, of course, bugs and issues will arise during the go live, but it's very important to be there. Not doing the go live before a weekend, let's say, No, do it at the beginning of the week, where we can support, as Odoo, we can support and help the client if there's any bug or issue, or you never know, whenever something happens during going live. Challenges. So as implementers, we do face challenges while implementing the project and dealing with the client and dealing with the different stakeholders. So it's very important to encourage the users to embrace Odoo. Now, you might receive some pushback from the end users, not necessarily the SPOK or the sponsors, but some of the end users will not like to switch. They're against change. So you need to empower the SPOK to be the change manager at the company. Help explain to them that this is talk to them about the product itself, Odoo, and its advantages and its added value to their business. Keeping things simple. Do not confuse them with a lot of terminology at the beginning, a lot of unnecessary training, or data import that's not very essential to the project. And then people's dynamics. So different SPOKs, different end users will need different interaction from your end. So you need to understand that maybe some of them will be helpful and will work with you. Some of them will be resistant. So you need to change your approach there. What else? Avoid importing data history. So yeah, if it's historical data that adds no value, maybe not import it, because it's just gonna take some time and not gonna add a lot of value to your project. If it's something that they can have access to, so let's say it's a legacy system or it's a file that they can download somewhere and refer back to it, then that's fine. If it's you don't have to import it to Odoo, but let's say it's something that is an open invoice or an open sale order that you need in your that they need in when they switch to Odoo. So yeah, we will import that with the format that we provide to them. But again, we can also do that at a later stage. So if it's gonna hold us back from going live on time, we can push it to a later date. And then something that happens from time to time is young project leaders' confidence. So as a implementer, you could be younger than the people dealing with in terms of SPOKs and sponsors, but you're more expert in the software. So you can ask them to explain to you their business operation, their business flows, and so on. But that should not shake your confidence as an implementer, because you are in control of the project and control of and you have the knowledge of how to implement their business need. You just need to learn from them what their flow is, to understand from them what the flow is. Okay, so in the book as well, there are some use cases. So I picked up, I think, 2 to tackle here. So let's look at use case number 1. I'll also be looking at the comments. So if anyone wants to volunteer an answer, go ahead. So use case 1. During the implementation of a 9-month project, a key user requests a change that will save them 4 hours of work every week. The user tells you that it's the main reason why they want to change their software. Unfortunately, the feature is not standard and it's estimated to take 2 weeks of extra development. So what do you think he will do? Option A, if the customer is ready to pay, it's okay to develop what will satisfy their need. Option B, try to convince the customer to avoid the development, but ultimately accept it if they really want it. And then option C, add this feature to the backlog of development to do after the go live. So let's see if any of the viewers want to answer. Okay, there might be some lag, so go ahead and answer your question later on, but I'll move on and look for the answer. Here is C. So we'll add this feature to the backlog of development to do after the go live. So as I said before, if things are gonna slow us and they're not essential to the product, it's just an extra customization, extra development that answers a very small of the cases of their business case, it should not hold the project back. It can be pushed to a later stage. And someone in the comments is saying 4 hours a week is long than A. 4 hours a week is only 10% of the week. Let's say here in Dubai, our work week is 40 hours, so 4 hours is only 10%. If it's gonna hold us back a lot, and this is a 9-month project, it's better to do it at a later stage. We don't have to stop now the project and do this development. Okay, so use case 5. Let's say, imagine the following situation. Before the go live, you have a meeting with the CEO. You have had a lot of issues during the project. They're not confident about your solution anymore, and they're scared about the go live. The CEO is thinking about pushing back the go live another 6 months. They meet with you and say, my company can't afford more issues to accept the go live. I need you to tell me everything will be smooth. What will the answer be? Let's wait. Actually, I'll read the answers. So option A is pushing back the deadline is actually a good idea to reduce the risks. Option B, don't worry, everything is under control. We tested everything. Option C, go live is always difficult, but we will fix the issues quickly. Okay, so let's look at the answer. Again, it's C. So a go live is always difficult. No matter how prepared you are, issues will arise during the go live. But the thing is, we will react quickly. We will fix the issues and move on. So let's look at option A and B. Pushing back the deadline is actually a good idea to reduce the risk. No matter how long or how far you push the deadline, you'll always face issues with going live. So there's no point of pushing the deadline. Saying, don't worry, everything is under control. We tested everything, which is option B, is also not so nice, because no matter how hard you test, not everything will make itself clear in testing phase. Sometimes you have to actually use the system and find these bugs and fix them. It's part of the project. So the answer here is C. A go live is always difficult, but we will fix issues quickly. Performance. Now in the booklet as well, there's a way for you as an implementer to measure your progress in Odoo. There's, I think, 3 levels. So there's beginner or novice, experienced, and then expert. And then there are these points that you can assign yourself if these things happen to you. So let's say for 1 point, if you have project delivered on time and on budget. If you receive a gift from a satisfied customer, that's another point. If you deploy minimum of 4 apps in 2 weeks per app, that's another point. Now let's look at the experienced one. If you pass the certification, the Odoo Functional Consultant certification exam with 70% and more, that's 2 points. If you achieve successful projects in 3 different industries, that's 2 points. And then for the experts, let's say it's a large project, you implement 500 users in one company in production, so that's 3 points. If you have 10 projects on budget, that's also 3 points. Now you gather all these points, and then you go to this graph where it shows you where ideally you should be with your points based on your years of experience. So within the first year, you need to be have around 5 points. Between year 1 and 2, around, let's say, between 5 and 10, more close towards the 10 side. And then between the 2 and 3 years, somewhere above 15 points, and so on. Now we're at the end of our webinar, but I will still be here taking questions, live Q&A in the comments. So I'm looking at the comment section now, and feel free to ask any question. Let's look at the comments. So yeah, people are answering C on the previous use case. Yeah, it may never reach the go live. Exactly what we said. If you just keep deferring the deadline, you'll never go live. All right. So I can't see any new questions, so I'll just move on. I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar, or if you're watching this at a later stage. My name is Faris Wali. I'm a project leader in Odoo Middle East, Dubai, and feel free to reach me at fwa@odoo.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.